A healthy turnout in Dominica as general elections go ahead in peace despite threats from the opposition. Bolivia's lower house passes the law on guarantees for the full exercise of constitutional rights. And the general strike in France goes into a second day. It's the biggest stoppage for decades. Hello and welcome to Telesur. I'm Doris Polo in Quito, and this is From the South. Voters are turning out in numbers in Dominica for the country's general elections, and so far the voting has been entirely peaceful. More than 70,000 residents are eligible to vote for 21 members of the parliament. The ruling Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Roosevelt Skerrit, and the opposition United Workers' Party, led by Lennox Linton, are the main contenders in this race. The opposition UWP has mounted roadblocks in recent days and threatened more violence to stop the vote, while the Secretary General of the OAS and the United States backed the opposition's demand for electoral reform. Our correspondent in Dominica, Alejandro Kirk, has the latest.
We came all the way from Roseau to the airport, crossing the whole island to see whether there were or not demonstrations, roadblocks and disturbances that could prevent this election to be fair, clean and complete. We found nothing. That's an eyewitness report. We saw debris from several roadblocks on the way, especially in the region of Manigot, which is the stronghold of opposition leader Lennox Linton, and where most of the disturbances have occurred in the past few days. But today there's nothing. People are voting. We haven't seen long queues, but that shouldn't surprise anybody. This is a small country. These communities are very, very small, and in the country's 21 circumscriptions, you have 252 poll stations, so there's no need for anybody to endure long queues. The atmosphere is peaceful, as we have been reporting. This violence doesn't seem to be natural for these Caribbean people who are very, very peaceful, friendly, and people who are not used to this kind of controversies. Also, we came to the airport to meet a delegation of observers, Latin American observers, one from Quito, the other one from Argentina, who were invited also to observe this process and maybe counteract observations that might be biased, like the suspicious one for many of the Organization of American States, the OAS, which played a critical role in the coup in Bolivia a few weeks ago. So there are many observation missions acting in the country, the CARICOM, the European Union, the OAS, and now this Latin American delegation. So they are all trying to put together reports that will not influence further attempts to stop the democratic process in Dominica. The democratic process is going on. The attempts to stop the election failed, even legal ones, one here in the Supreme Court and another one in an appeals court in St. Lucia. So everything looks like there will be another election. This election is taking place and the process is smooth, peaceful and quiet.
Now, as Alejandro Kirk has mentioned, Dominica's right-wing opposition has set up roadblocks in an attempt to stop these elections. And as the government ordered the police to clear the roads, violence has hit an important sector of the economy: tourism.
When cruise ships dock here, Dominica gets excited and blooms. Tons of beer are sold in bars like this. Ladies sell handicrafts and souvenirs, and taxis take visitors to the jungle. Not these days. Now they have to chase whoever shows up. The vessels did not come.
You have the opposition, you know, the supporters blocking the road, and they block the airport. Here I supposed to bring people that live in the island to the airport to take a plane. They cannot do that. Then cruise ships supposed to come, no cruise ships. And the business for taxi drivers and the poor people suffering real bad.
So did the Prime Minister warn.
We awoke this morning to the hurtful news of the cancellation of some flights by seaborne airlines due to the hooliganism of the supporters of the opposition. I must also inform you that the cruise lines which visit our shores are now also contemplating whether they will suspend calls on Dominica indefinitely.
Any cruise ship disembarks over 10% of Rosso's population.
You see, right now we're in a cruise ship season, and when we have a lot of ships, this is actually the party spot. You know, it's close to the dock, everything. So everybody come here to party. After that, it's gone.
Well, business has been slow because the ships are not coming back until maybe after election, I don't know. Well, I mean, they're protesting for their rights, but at the same time, it is offending us, some of us.
It is not just beer what Dominica has to offer.
Our country is primarily dependent on agriculture, but what we have done is to twin the two together. So when persons come to Dominica, we ensure that they experience a Dominican experience in terms of the food, the drink that we have to offer. So these actions impact not only the tourism sector, but it's also impacting the agricultural sector, because all of these agricultural persons, the fish, the vegetables, the fruits, they provide those to the hotels, and in turn, the visitors partake in these and enjoy them.
Trust is built up over many years. Breaking it takes nothing.
Tourism, it should be in the region about $350 million in terms of the economic impact into the country. Well, clearly it's very unfortunate that the opposition has taken a stance to use violence to bring their point across. And it's very sad that it has a very negative impact on the economy of Dominica.
The electoral process is in full gear. Attempts to stop it have failed. Yet, the opposition has warned that should it not win, it will not recognize its results. Jesus Romero and Alejandro Kirk, Telesur, Dominica.
Now, Peter Wickham of Cadres in Barbados has been involved in pre-election polling in Dominica. We asked him if voter intentions seem to be shifting on the island.
One of the areas of protest is Maho. Maho is near the airport, and that has historically been a UWP stronghold. And then we have, of course, VCAS, which is the stronghold of the governing party. And yeah, we have these political alliances which are very strong. Certainly the Labour Party would have had more of these, but the Workers' Party has some fairly strong areas. As I said, in Maho is one of them, and that's one of the areas that they have been using that strength to block the streets, to send a signal that there is widespread chaos and confusion. So there's that cleavage, and I think in the Caribbean, we have, for better or worse, these pockets of strength for both political parties, and they really are not evolving or changing. So that constituency has been Labour at UWP for as long as anyone can remember, and then there's some others which have been Labour for as long as anyone can remember. And I don't really get the impression that the hardcore supporters are moving one way or the other. The swing in terms of popular support in the last 5 elections in Dominica has been less than 5%, which really tells me that there's really no significant shift in terms of political attitudes over the years. No, I would say it's about larger geographical support. The problem, of course, is that geography in Dominica is fluid. So a person who is a Maho resident who moves into the city sees himself as a Maho resident. They will go back to Maho to vote. Indeed, that's one of the problems that they're having now, the whole idea of itinerant voting. So people will have an allegiance to the geography and they will vote on that basis. As far as like the youth are concerned, women, of course, are not, I wouldn't say that that's a politically tribal group in one way or the other. Women are men. But the younger people tend to identify more with Labour, largely because Labour has been able to put on a campaign that appeals to younger people. They had rallies that had music, and we had Buju Banton just recently for Creole Music Festival. So I think that Labour is widely accepted to appeal to that younger group, but certainly the geography is really the key factor.
Moving from the Caribbean and into Latin America, strike leaders in Colombia failed to reach an agreement with the government on Thursday. So they say the protests continue. Our correspondent in Bogotá, Hernán Tobar, has the latest.
The actions of the social movements, the students, the indigenous organizations against President Iván Duque's austerity measures have not stopped. These measures include a series of social, economic and political reforms which directly affect the majority of the population in Colombia. On Thursday, leaders of the strike movement had a meeting with representatives of the government, but there was no agreement. After the meeting, the strike leaders gave a news conference and said the government was delaying substantive talks by demanding the strike committee would be more explicit and precise in its demands. The government has already proposed a broad national dialogue, but the strike movement has rejected that because they say the government is meeting with other sectors like the business associations, which are not part of the strike, and that the government needs to talk directly with them. Another meeting has been called for next Wednesday, where the strike leaders will demand that the government take seriously the demands that protesters are expressing in the streets. This weekend there will be assemblies, pot-banging protests and marches, and on Sunday there will be a mobile concert with some big-name artists who are supporting the strike to accompany the marches. And another national stoppage has been called for the 10th of December, that's next Tuesday.
As Colombians continue their protests against the government's austerity measures, a concert was held on Thursday night to celebrate the culture of those who have been resisting for 500 years and who remain forgotten by President Iván Duque.
They tune each instrument, test the strings and rehearse. Musicians from different parts of Colombia united in the People's Philharmonic for a special show.
This is a tribute to the Indigenous Guard. It hasn't been done for more than 500 years, because the Indigenous Guard came from Cauca to support the national strike, a very important movement where we are seeking dialogue.
They are using instruments brought to the Americas by the colonizers. Here they are mixed with protest songs in a concert entitled Resistance for Life.
What we are doing is based on the meeting of two cultures. This concert is in honor of the greatest resistance ever in the world.
Everything is ready, and then the Indigenous Guard were welcomed to this performance.
The rights of the people cannot be negotiated. We come to demand respect for life, for the land, and for peace, because the government has not implemented the agreements. In his campaign, the president promised not to increase taxes, but he's done the opposite. We are troubled by what is happening to the Colombian people. That is why the struggle of the students, campesinos, and Afro-Colombians is also our struggle.
Flags wave in recognition of Colombia's ancestral peoples. Now they hope that this song to demand social rights is heard in the talks with the government, which for now are stalled.
Coming up, is discontent brewing among Bolivia's coup-promoting right-wing opposition? Stay with us to find out. Welcome back. Bolivia's lower house has passed the law on guarantees for the full exercise of constitutional rights. The bill seeks to ensure compensation for the families of those who were killed and injured during the social uprising last month and to grant constitutional guarantees to lawmakers. The bill still has to go to the Senate.
After more than 11 hours of debate, Law 511 has finally been approved, both in general and in detail. There were many issues raised by the opposition as well as current government. There's been some misinformation, but this was finally clarified. I want to make it clear to the Bolivian people that this law is the consolidation of the agreements reached with the Bishops' Conference, the United Nations and some other international bodies, which have been mediators together with the government, and our movement towards socialism representatives. In this dialogue, a number of agreements were reached to pacify the country. This law that guarantees constitutional rights does not seek impunity. And those authorities who have been investigated and have been identified as the perpetrators of crimes must be punished.
Meanwhile, the OAS has released its final report of the audit on the Bolivian elections. The report, which took nearly a month, claims that there was malicious manipulation and serious irregularities, which made it impossible to validate the results. Morales, in exile in Mexico, had denounced the OAS for its delay and failure to publish the final report. The report looks much like the preliminary one used to argue fraud and justify the coup against President Evo Morales. And the Center for Economic and Policy Research took to Twitter rejecting the OAS final audit report on Bolivia's elections. It said the report repeats the worst errors of their previous work and introduces more. This is not an objective audit. We'll have a response soon. CEPR will publish an in-depth review in the coming days. Shifting gears now, it's just days until the elected president of Argentina takes office, and he has already selected the first members of his cabinet. Our correspondent Sabrina Roth has more.
Friday at 6 p.m., the elected President Alberto Fernández will announce his government cabinet as he takes office on December 10. There have been months of speculation. The first announcement of a member of his cabinet was Daniel Arroyo, current lawmaker who will take up the position of Minister of Social Development and will lead the plan to fight hunger in Argentina. Ginés González García will also be a key figure. He's a former ambassador to Chile and former Minister of Health. Under Mauricio Macri, the Ministry of Health was downgraded to a secretariat and will now be reinstated as a ministry. Lawmaker Felipe Solá will be the next foreign minister, and Daniel Scioli will be the ambassador in Brazil, Argentina's main business partner, a key country due to the figure of President Jair Bolsonaro for being very critical towards Fernández.
And that was our correspondent Sabrina Roth with that report. Several Nicaraguan families will have a festive Christmas season after receiving their deeds to their lands, a document that guarantees their legal security in rural and urban areas across the country.
And across different parts of the country, officials from the Attorney General's office are seeing hand-delivering deeds. Having lived in this house for 40 years, Doña Juana is excited and relieved.
I already feel happy. I can now die peacefully knowing that my children are on legal property and nobody can force them out.
More than 200 deeds have been allocated to residents in the capital Managua, 50 of which will be handed over to people in the San Judas neighborhood. The beneficiaries cannot sell their properties for a minimum of 5 years, but they can use it to qualify for loans toward home improvement or to invest in their land.
We have to ensure that the right person gets this land title. The owner must show us their identification card. We'll verify the signature with the one we have in our documents to guarantee that he or she is the one truly receiving this benefit.
Attorney General Wendy Morales recounts that the handing over of land titles first began at the beginning of the revolution in the 1980s. It resumed in 2007 with the triumph of the Sandinista government.
We have delivered 395,000 deeds during this government's tenure. From 2007 to 2011 alone, we handed over 150,000 land titles in the first period and 140,000 in the second period. And we expect to end December 2019 with approximately 70,000 land titles delivered in this first period.
It should be noted that persons who qualify for this incentive receive a step-by-step assistance to complete the registration process, free of charge. 3,500 titles will be handed over this month, and the government hopes to successfully deliver 411,000 deeds by 2021.
In some devastating news, more immigrants have died trying to reach Europe from Africa. We'll unpack this and more after the break. Welcome back. At least 58 people have died in a shipwreck off the coast of Mauritania on Wednesday. 85 survivors were rescued and received assistance from local authorities, 10 of whom were hospitalized. According to the Interior Ministry, the boat carried more than 150 people, mostly immigrants trying to reach Spain from Gambia. Survivors told officials that the boat left Gambia on November 27th and ran out of fuel. The Gambian government said that it will send a delegation to investigate the accident.
I am Gia Alpha Sungo for the Republic of Senegal. I am currently living in the Gambia. Now I am in Nouadhibou. I were on a journey to Spain for better work. It was a cruel journey, and we were deceived. Thank God we were rescued and taken care of. Thanks to Mauritania.
Dozens of Afghans have marched against the killing of Japanese doctor and aid worker Tetsu Nakamura. Nakamura and 5 others were murdered by unknown gunmen in the east of the country. Media reports say authorities were waiting to take Nakamura's body to his family, who are expected to arrive in Kabul on Friday. Nakamura was the head of Peace Japan Medical Services and had recently been granted honorary Afghan citizenship for decades of humanitarian work.
The killing of Dr. Nakamura is a very big shame on the Afghan government, because this crime-ridden state spends thousands of dollars to protect the people who turned Afghanistan into ruins. But it didn't do anything to protect the life of a man who came here and did a lot for the Afghan people.
Activists in Iraq have joined a march commemorating Nasiriyah, residents killed in anti-government demonstrations. They carried coffins and demanded justice for 46 people murdered after security forces opened fire on them. Paramedics noted that they tended to scores of lethal wounds from rifle and machine guns against unarmed protesters. More than 400 protesters and a dozen members of the security forces have died in the arrest, including nearly 100 people in Nasiriyah. Iraq's government denies the repression and blames violence on unidentified saboteurs.
He went out to demand for his rights, his legitimate rights, like work, a decent living, to be comfortable in this country. He walked out with an Iraqi flag in his hands, only to be faced with live fire by the security forces. This march is emblematic for Iraq, and especially for Nasiriyah, the city of martyrs, the city of the revolutionaries.
Officials in both Russia and South Africa are rejecting U.S. interference in China following the signing of the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. The U.S. government signed the bill into law despite China's warnings that the move constitutes interference in the country's internal affairs. The leader of the Russian Communist Party says U.S. President Donald Trump is showing his disregard for China's interests, while the Deputy Minister of Home Affairs of South Africa said that no external party should interfere in the issues of Hong Kong.
At present, China has shown the world a unique case in promoting national modernization and has become a model for the world. The U.S. doesn't want to see this. It is trying to intervene in other countries' internal affairs through legislation. They have a habit of doing so. This must be resisted by any country that wants to have independent sovereignty and an independent market.
We will call upon anyone, including the United States of America, not to interfere in the work of other countries. I think that they have a lot that they must deal with, they themselves, and leave the issue of Hong Kong to the people of Hong Kong. We also wish to call upon that the violence must stop. It is not good for anyone to continue to see violence. We believe that dialogue will be the best way to resolve whatever issues that will be there.
A general strike against pension reform is into its second day in France. On Thursday night, French police fired tear gas at workers in Paris. Over 800,000 workers are estimated to have taken to the streets in protest throughout France on the first day. It was the biggest strike the country has seen since 1995. The CGT and other major unions called the stoppage to try to force President Emmanuel Macron to abandon his plans to increase the retirement age and pension contributions. And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, remember you can find us on Starsat Channel 461 in South Africa and Channel 539 in Nigeria. And join us on social media. For Telesur English, I'm Doris Polo. Thank you for watching.